Welcome to the PinkpillRx podcast, hosted by Katie and Jay Fillmore, where we navigate complex and thought-provoking topics surrounding women with a focus on education. For shorter form content, follow us on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube at Caters88 or PinkpillRx.
That's Kators 88.
If you enjoy this podcast, please give us a follow and maybe a nice review.
Oh, Jay.
Yeah.
It's been a minute since it's just been the two of us. We've had guests the last two episodes.
It's been a lot of fun, though.
It has been a lot of fun. And we were supposed to have another guest this week. Unfortunately, our dog got very ill and we had to cancel that guest. So this is kind of an episode on the fly.
Those are pretty fun, though. It's like back to our roots, you know? I really like the beginning, the man versus bear stuff, because, man, it was just all so shocking. Bam, bam, bam. And I'm like, what world do I live in?
But now you feel pretty disenchanted, don't you?
Yeah.
Now you're
It's
like,
less
what
shocking
world do
now.
I live in? Of course.
Yeah, it's more of an of course thing. Like, yeah. Just unsurprising.
Sorry to burst your bubble.
You don't need to be sorry for informing. Yeah, don't be sorry for informing.
Do you remember the case that I was talking about where there was the woman who was being charged with felony recording because she recorded her sexual assault?
Yeah, I remember that.
Remember that?
Yeah.
So she recorded it and took it to the police, and then she got in trouble and like charged with making a false police report and also charged with felony recording.
Mm-hmm.
She had her trial.
And?
They found her guilty.
Oh, my gosh.
So she gets sentenced on August 20th, and I'm...
Sentenced to, what do you...
Like, to jail.
Oh, my gosh. Not like community service, probation, fines.
I mean, I don't know. I guess August 20th will tell.
What are the charges exactly that she was charged with?
I mean, it's a felony, Jay. Whatever it is, a felony recording of some sort.
Okay.
No, it was felony wiretapping.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, felony wiretapping.
But it's not wiretapping.
No, I'm pretty sure that's what they charged her with, though.
Okay, what state is it in?
Pennsylvania.
It's a wiretap act. Whoa, fines up to $15,000, imprisonment up to 7 years. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. How? Oh my gosh. That's unbelievable. So you are raped and have it recorded? Am I remembering that right?
Correct.
And then you're the one who's going to go to prison.
Correct. And that is not like a super crazy as you would think it would be. Because there are like trafficked people who have committed a crime against their pimp or committed a crime against the person holding them hostage and gotten charged with it and gone to prison.
Oh my God. The injustice I feel about that.
One of the cases that stick out to me is Crystal Kaiser. She was a Milwaukee woman who at the age of 17 fatally shot Randall Volar. And this happened in 2018. Kaiser stated that Volar had been sexually abusing and trafficking her. And in 2024, she was sentenced to 11 years in prison.
Oh my gosh.
So she escaped the trafficking, but obviously...
No, she's in prison.
Is in prison now. Of course, she was a woman of color, and the guy that she killed was a white guy. And I do think that matters.
Mm. You know, even if it doesn't matter to a jury, I'm not saying that it didn't, but even if it doesn't matter to a jury, the sentencing's in the hands of the judge. So if the judge has any bias or prejudice, then, you know, you're screwed when it comes to whatever consequence of the crime they found you guilty for.
So at 15, Piper Lewis was a victim of sex trafficking and fatally stabbed a man who said had raped her multiple times. Mm-hmm. And in 2022, she pled guilty to involuntary manslaughter and willful injury. She received a sentence of 5 years probation and a requirement to pay $150,000 in restitution to her abuser's family.
Oh my gosh. This is like, it's hard to find words for it. It's really disgusting and horrific and not justice at all. And it should not occur. And it's it's totally against the spirit of justice.
Let me tell you a couple other cases. Centoya Brown was 16 when she killed a man who had solicited her for sex, and she was tried as an adult and sentenced to life in prison.
Oh my God.
Now, I will say that she only served 15 after serving 15 years. Her sentence was commuted in 2019 due to a lot of public advocacy that was highlighting her history as a victim of child sex trafficking. Sarah Cruzan was groomed into sex trafficking at 11, and at 16 killed her trafficker. She was sentenced to life without parole.
Oh my God.
She was later granted clemency and released after serving 19 years.
Yeah, just 2 decades of your life.
I mean, at 16 though, how can you live a functional life
Yeah.
after? I mean,
You don't know how the world works at all.
exactly.
These are really, really just so sad.
In 1998, April Wilkins killed her abusive ex-fiance after enduring severe domestic violence. Despite abundant evidence of this abuse, she was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison.
First degree?
Yeah. Piper Lewis was in Iowa. Centoya Brown was Tennessee. Sarah Cruzan was California. And April Wilkins was Oklahoma.
And the current one we mentioned at the beginning is Pennsylvania. What's
Yep.
her name?
Pennsylvania. And that's Victoria Rodriguez.
That is like, to put myself in that person's shoes, it's horrific.
Yeah.
You had no life, now you will have no life. Like someone took away the beginning of your life, and now the justice system's taken away the rest, even if it's not life in prison. Like you had said, how can you function as an adult when you've never been
When you were a
guided into the
child
world?
and raised essentially, the latter part of your adolescence into young adulthood. I mean, you're raised in the prison system.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying people that go to prison don't have like quality of life afterwards, but we know that we do not in the United States operate a prison system that is true restorative justice. It's punitive justice, and it does not support mental health and all those things.
And especially if you're an adolescent, you're a child.
Right. Well, going on to our other topics for today, that is really, really heavy. I want to talk about internalized misogyny a little bit. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because I had a thought the other day that kind of made me self-check about my own internalized misogyny and how sneaky it can be. So I want to touch on 3 different areas: religion, rest, and rivalry.
Before you do, can you define what you're referring to as internalized misogyny?
Internalized misogyny refers to when women or people of any gender absorb and adopt sexist beliefs or biases against women, often unconsciously. So these beliefs are shaped by society that privileges masculinity and devalues femininity. And over time, they become part of how women view themselves, other women, and their roles in the world. So it's like a subconscious internalization of sexist ideas and patriarchal values.
Okay.
What kicked this off is that God is genderless, right? Like, as far as theology goes, theologically, most traditions, including Christianity, affirm that God transcends gender. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do.
Yet, God is almost always described in male terms. He's imaged as a male. He's prayed to his father, Lord, King. Does it make you uncomfortable at all? Just gut check, honestly. Praying to Mother God.
Yes.
Because it feels like what?
It feels like I'm doing something wrong.
Right?
Yeah. Like the idea of God as mother actually is pretty comforting, but the idea of like praying to God as mother, just inside it feels like, oh, I feel like I'm doing something wrong here.
I think that's internalized misogyny. I think that's patriarchal theology. God transcends gender. So it shouldn't matter. We should be able to interchangeably say father, mother. If we feel odd saying Mother God who birthed the universe, but feel totally fine with Father God who rules the universe. Like, that's patriarchal theology. Do you disagree?
I don't know. So I have some thoughts about it. I think that when you're involved in a religious tradition that has some type of large moral consequence involved, like, for example, the mainstream idea of hell in Christianity, right? Then veering away from what theology you have been conditioned in, aka God, Father, it's going to feel like you're doing something wrong because you're involved in a religious system that has severe consequences for believing or teaching the wrong thing or practicing the wrong thing. So for me, the feeling, personally at least, is not, oh, that feels icky theologically. It's, oh, my body doesn't like that because it's been conditioned by a religious system that involves, like I said, severe consequence or disconnection for practicing, believing, or teaching like the wrong thing.
What's interesting is that is colonization talk and thought as well, of this thinking of right and wrong, and that you know what's right and what's wrong, and like have a monopoly on that. So that's just an interesting like side note.
Yeah, I don't know too much about that to speak to it, but I just know it makes my body feel icky, and it's not because the feminine terms themselves. It's because, oh, this is contradictory to what I've been conditioned to what I have to believe.
And you have been conditioned to believe that authority is male when it comes to religion. And I think, I mean, in general, probably, but I'm just talking about religion right now, that authority is male, that power is masculine, and that the divine is male coded. Like, just think about it for a second. How ridiculous it is that makes us feel like icky when we know that God is beyond gender. But we don't feel icky calling him Father, even though we know he's beyond gender.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Give me a second here, Katie.
We know that God is not a man or a woman.
Yeah, I think the Genesis 1 and 2 account are actually pretty clear about that.
But for thousands of years, we've only been taught to pray to him as he, him, Father, King, Lord, et cetera, et cetera. And then when we say Mother God, people flinch or they laugh or they say that it feels weird or that that's not theologically correct. When Father isn't theologically correct, technically.
Yeah, and then people will go back to the biblical text, but the thing about that is that it was written by people in a very patriarchal society, more so than what we live in now, for sure. And that was the worldview of the people who were the authors.
In the Old Testament, in Hebrew scripture, God's spirit is feminine. Ruach is feminine.
Oh, yeah.
In Proverbs, God's wisdom is woman, Sophia. It's woman. And in Isaiah, God is described as a laboring mother. And we were just taught like not to notice.
Yeah, or like that's a some type of analogy when Father is more literal.
Say it again.
Like when examples of the feminine are used with God in the Old Testament, people are like, well, yeah, it's to illustrate a point of an attribute, but he's really called Father.
Right, as if that is the...
Well, in Genesis, it says that in his image he created them, male and female he created them. Like both were made in his image, so
he embodies the masculine and feminine, and he's non-binary.
I mean, I think that's much more accurate.
I'm talking Christian tradition.
Yeah. So if you're listening and that's not your tradition, obviously, we're not trying to proselytize or trying to. This is not a religious conversation. This is a cultural conversation.
Yeah, it just is interesting how the internalized misogyny in religion shows up like subtly in that way. Actually, it's not really subtly.
My icky feeling is what I said it was, but I wonder if also in there, I'm just self-reflecting now, if it's also like that to refer to God as mother is to somehow like demote him.
Like, do you feel that way?
I don't know. I can't tell yet. I mean, I have to reflect on this after the podcast probably, but I'm wondering if that's rattling around in there because I wonder if part of the feeling I'm having is also like I'm disrespecting him somehow.
Isn't that interesting that mother would be disrespectful?
Yeah, which is weird because at the same time, that actually feels more comforting to me. Because, like, I mean, traditionally, you associate a father with more like harshness, you know, than with like a compassionate mother.
The fact that mother feels like demotion shows that there's this internalization that the masculine is more sacred or authoritative.
Yeah.
And the feminine is more unfamiliar, weak, or even heretical.
Yeah, and I don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that's it. I'm just curious if that's kind of rattling around in there. I have to take more like self-inventory for that. But I think that could be a common feeling maybe other people have too. Stronger, or I don't know. I'm just talking because I have not thought about this before.
I know. I caught you off guard with this one.
Yeah.
I just think that if we can't picture God with these feminine qualities, right, and can't identify him as the nurturer, the life giver, the maternal without discomfort, that it reveals that we have like deeply absorbed the belief that those traits are less divine. And I think that has real life consequences. It sidelines women in ministry. It devalues feminine coded leadership. Like when I say feminine coded leadership, I mean like leadership that displays empathy, intuition, cooperation, like that kind of stuff, you know? And it teaches girls that God doesn't look like them.
Oh. Wow, that one hits pretty different. At least for me.
Because daughters?
Yeah. Because it's like representation, you know?
Yeah, God always being referred to as he normalizes maleness as the default for power, authority, divinity, etc.
I have never thought about how growing up, God has always been referred to as the same gender I am, and what that must be like to be female and never have God referred to as female. Wow. It's like me growing up with every president being male.
Yeah.
And me being like, it's just, oh, yeah, well. But then I have no idea what it feels like to be a woman and your leader is never been a woman. You know, I wonder if a lot of it is when someone's reading of a religious text is more literal than looking at the overarching themes that are being communicated here. Like, because in a literal interpretation, you read the text plainly, it is what it is, and you're not picking up on a lot of like maybe the context of the history or the culture, or picking up on a literary style or something like that, and or picking up on a broader theme that's being communicated, that's woven in all these different chapters or books or whatever. And if you just read the text and it's always God, Father, God, Father, God, Father, he, and you're just reading it plainly, yeah, well, you're going to think that God's a dude. But if you look at the themes and understand like, oh, this was written in a society that was hyper patriarchal. So of course that's the perspective of the authors who are writing this. Then yeah, you're going to be like, well, if let's say these scriptures were written in an egalitarian society at the time, how could they possibly look different in their pronouns or their descriptions of God?
I think that what is interesting is knowing that the society was highly patriarchal. I cannot say that word today.
Patriarchal. There's like
I've been saying it too much. It's worn out. I can't say it anymore.
In the words of Ted Lasso,
But
the word
became a sound. That even in a society that was like that, so much femininity got woven in when you have Ruach and Sophia and you have, you know, God referred to as a laboring woman and all that stuff. Like, I think that says a lot of how important those qualities were, that they were mentioned in a society that's so anti. All I know is that as a girl growing up in an evangelical church and God always being referred to as he, him, and there not being a focus on the maternal at all, really, that it made it feel like men were closer to God and women were a derivative or only secondary.
Oh, like men were created in God's image and women were created in men's image?
Exactly.
Whoa. Oh my gosh. Did you just hear what I said?
Yes, but that's exactly how I felt.
But that's crazy because the text says it, in his image he created them, male and female, but it's just been taught, the theme has been just interwoven that like God created man and then God created woman out of man, therefore woman is made in man's image versus in God's image.
Yeah. That's not I'm sorry, that's not shocking to me because I've lived that my entire life.
I have never really...
And I've tried to explain that too. That's why Ezra was so significant to me. Because I was always like a derivative of man.
Right, versus a derivative of God.
Correct.
Yes, Genesis 1:27. God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. And that's not even the account where woman was taken out of man. That's in Genesis 2.
I'm going to just pontificate some other things that are internalized misogyny as I kind of looked into this. You have Eve as the archetype of blame. There's this narrative that's used that women are the reason for the fall.
Mm-hmm.
And that results in a distrust of women's judgment, their bodies, and their autonomy. Like it puts it into question. And where that becomes internalized misogyny is women learn to question their own instincts and see themselves as temptresses, burdens, or liabilities. Mm. There was an erasure of female religious leaders. We know in early Christian history, women led churches and were apostles like Junia, but were later written out of the Bible. And the modern effect of that is many women believe that they aren't meant to preach or lead or hold spiritual authority. And a lot of men believe that too, that God only truly calls men to lead. And then you got purity culture and the control of women's bodies. You got the doctrine that women must stay pure to be worthy of relationship with God, to be worthy of marriage, be worthy of respect. And the misogynistic root of that is women's sexuality is policed while men's lust is excused. You see that constantly.
Yeah.
Then you got this glorification of suffering as God's will for women. So abuse is often framed as your cross to bear, or submission is praised as godliness in abusive relationships. We have seen this with people in our own lives.
Yeah.
Using religion to excuse marital abuse.
It's interesting that with Eve, in this level of blame and level of like need to be subservient and stuff like that, it's not really talked about how what Adam's role in that was of his lack of taking responsibility.
No, of course not.
That's not really talked about.
I want to talk about some more sneaky ways that internalized misogyny kind of shows up. And this one kind of like, when I was doing research on this one got me. Because some of the stuff is like more obvious, you know, but this one was not as obvious and it kind of wrecked me a little bit. Mm. So this might feel familiar to some women out there, but feeling guilty for resting. So many of us feel like we have to earn rest. And I don't know why this is the case, but laying down or lying down, taking rest, etc., is very linked to shame with me. We've talked about this so many times, me and you, about how much shame that I feel for like just resting.
Yeah.
Because we've been conditioned to believe that our value is based on how much we do, especially for other people when it comes to being a woman. And when we stop doing it even for a moment, this guilt starts to creep in. And this isn't just anecdotal. A study in the Journal of Interpersonal and Social Skills found that working mothers who feel guilty about resting often score higher on internalized sexism scales. They're more likely to self-objectify and prioritize other needs, even to the point of exhaustion. And there's like historical roots in this. The good woman works herself to death, right? So from this domestic sphere to modern workplaces, women have been praised for self-sacrifice. The ideal woman archetype, whether she's a homemaker or a career woman, gives everything to others and asks for nothing in return. And rest is framed as like this indulgent, even immoral or irresponsible thing for a woman to do when she has, children and a house and a husband and a job. Mothers who rest are framed as neglectful, or women who pause and rest often will be judged as being lazy more harshly a lot of times than you'll see men.
I've witnessed that anecdotally in my life. Because like if a guy rests, it's like, oh, he works hard.
Yes. And patriarchy trains women to tie their worth to how useful they are to other people. So cooking dinner, valuable. Taking a nap, selfish. Helping your partner decompress, admirable. Saying, I need a break, dramatic. And I think it's misogyny that's internalized as self-discipline. I think it's misogyny internalized, but it's like we believe it's self-discipline when we have this negative self-talk about rest. And even when women are resting, they're often not really resting because they're mentally running through other people's needs or anticipating the next crisis, feeling guilty. And this is emotional labor of rest. Like women can't even like rest without having emotional labor tied to it. And you hear things like moms don't get sick days. But you're right. When men rest, they're seen as like, oh, he works hard.
Yeah.
If you see a mother resting, the thought, I mean, even if you don't have a negative thought of like, oh, she's lazy, you're not thinking, oh, she works hard. Like that's not your knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah.
Even if your reaction's neutral, you don't have a thought one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
But just to see that like the men get like this praise essentially for rest. Or a pass.
Like, oh, he works so hard.
Moms don't get sick days. So I think we need to start reclaiming rest as a feminist act. I think we name the guilt as internalized misogyny. This isn't laziness, okay? We're unlearning what we've been taught. You deserve rest. It's not a break from being productive. It's a return to being human. And I think it's important to model it for our kids. And I think you practice unearned rest. Don't wait until you've finished your list. For God's sake, take a nap. I'm a napper. I like naps.
That was unbelievably well said.
So just think about rest. It's a rebellion against patriarchy.
It's a return to being human, like you said.
It is. It is. And I think both genders deserve rest, for the record.
Yeah. It's a human thing.
This chronic stress and lack of rest. And you look at women who have 80% of the autoimmune disorders.
80%?
Like 80% of women, like 80% of autoimmune disorders, like women, are women.
Whoa, I didn't know that. 80%. Is that the stress, the cortisol levels?
Yes, it's chronic stress.
Wow.
It's inflammation.
Holy cow.
Women report higher perceived stress levels than men in nearly every global survey, particularly related to emotional labor and household roles. So that chronic stress increases your risk for autoimmune diseases and other things. Cardiovascular disease, mental health decline. Women are twice as likely to be diagnosed with anxiety disorders, which are exacerbated, by the way, by sleep deprivation. The mental load that women carry alone creates a constant state of cognitive fatigue, which a lot of times isn't resolved by physical rest alone. But physical rest is often the first thing that's sacrificed when it comes to women. You got to do the things. You just got to do it.
I'm more quiet just because this is it's not my experience.
Reclaiming rest isn't just self-care. It's a rejection of the idea that your body is only valuable when it's useful to others. True rest for a woman isn't just sleep. It's radical permission to exist without performing. Freedom from being useful, pleasant, productive, or available. So I did look up some ways that we can rest because I don't think we know how to rest. So here's what it looks like to rest. That's actually a restorative rest, physically, emotionally. So physical rest is important, not just the absence of movement, but the absence of pressure to move. So lying down without guilt, napping without earning it, listening to your body instead of overriding it, letting yourself be still even when dishes are in the sink or texts are unanswered. Mental rest, no planning, no managing, no anticipating during your rest time. A break from the mental load of keeping everyone's lives running. There's like assistive things you can do to help with rest, like coloring, crocheting, walking without headphones. Scrolling on your phone doesn't count if it leaves you more activated than soothed. As a reminder. There's emotional rest, so permission to not perform wellness for others, meaning not smiling when you don't feel like it, not softening your tone for someone else's comfort, not being strong if you're crumbling. True emotional rest means you don't have to be inspiring, likable, or emotionally generous just because someone else expects it. Social rest, being around people who let you drop the mask, who let you skip small talk, no emotional caretaking, no feeling that like you need to explain yourself or why you said something. Or you can just be alone in your own space on your own terms. Social rest is saying, I don't have the energy to perform, and that doesn't make me rude. Sensory rest, decreasing noise, decreasing input, turning off notifications on your phone, leaving your phone in another room, turning off the TV. This is really important for neurodivergent women especially. Sensory rest is essential and often misunderstood as laziness or being antisocial, especially for neurodivergent women. It's not. It's self-care. Actually, no, what did I say? It's a resistance against the patriarchy, not just self-care. There's a kind of rest that's called existential rest. So that's not having to justify your worth. You're allowed to do nothing and still matter. You are allowed to opt out and still belong. And you're allowed to rest, not as recovery from productivity, but as a human right. You should not be doing more. Everyone does not need you. If you're not productive, you're not falling behind. Focusing on things like a slower breathing, decreasing urgency. Oh, that feels nice. Doesn't it? Does it feel nice to you?
Feels nice to me. It must feel infinitely nicer to you too.
Moving on to our last internalized misogyny thing. This is specifically talking about women on women internalized misogyny. This idea that like I just get along better with guys, thinking she's too much or I'm just not like other girls. That's all internalized misogyny. The desire to be low maintenance. Don't want to be too much. Don't want to seem too bossy. Thinking women like other women try too hard. Women are bad at judging other women sometimes. Women that wear too much makeup, oh, they're fake, or no makeup, oh, they're not taking care of themselves. They let themselves go. Women who have cosmetic surgery, oh, she's insecure. And like I've been told before, oh, you're not like other girls. And I've taken that as a compliment. But now, being more mature, looking back on that, that's just reinforcing girls are bad, being different from girls is good. Instead of just letting girls be different from each other. Like we can all be just different girls. Like we can all be different. And not like other girls. Because we're all different. Expecting women to sugarcoat everything. So if a woman's assertive, she's like rude, you know? Mm-hmm. If she's confident, she's intimidating. Mm-hmm. And then we normalize male disrespect. Oh, he's just a guy. Boys will be boys. He didn't mean it. It's not that big of a deal.
That's just the way he talks.
Just the way he talks, yeah. And I think that in leadership, we've been taught to value logic over emotion, stoicism over empathy. I don't know. There's just a lot of ways I feel like that women have internalized misogyny towards other women, and men too can have this towards women, obviously. But I think that it's important that you catch yourself as a woman if you're thinking this about other women.
Kind of divides women. Being in a minority position, at least in the power structure, you should all be on each other's team all the time.
Problem is, patriarchy has pitted women against each other. They make them competitive instead of having community. The system sets us up to compete for safety, for validation, for power. There's a scarcity of power and status because patriarchy limits the number of leadership roles and recognition, social power women can actually access. So there's a scarcity there. So there's a power dynamic there with other women. I mean, if there's only one woman at the executive table, we got to fight for it. She's the exception, not the norm. One woman full of guys, one woman, and then the other boardrooms full of men.
Yeah.
That's competition. If she wins, you lose. Like in this,
point.
do you know?
Yeah.
It creates this artificial scarcity, which breeds this competition. The other thing that breeds competition is appearance as currency. So in patriarchal cultures, women are often valued most for how they look, especially in the media and in like dating spaces.
Yeah.
So when beauty is framed as power, women are socialized to compete for male attention or approval using appearance as currency. So then when a woman does something to her appearance, it's easy for other women to judge or to have opinion about that because they set it up as competition.
Interesting.
And just there's a lot of cultural narratives out there of rivalry. You have reality TV to fairy tales. Girls are fed these stories like women on The Bachelor compete. The villain in a lot of like these fairy tales are like jealous women. So like Cinderella's stepmother and sisters.
Oh, Snow White.
Yeah, there's only one queen bee, like Mean Girls.
Mm-hmm.
So like we see it in media everywhere too, that like only one woman can win. Only one woman can be at the table.
Ursula wanted the little Ariel's voice.
Yeah, so patriarchy teaches women to see each other as competition rather than community. And I think a lot of women are hurt by other women under patriarchy and they never learn how to repair that trust. I think it's really easy to get hurt by other women and then to absorb these patriarchal messages that say other women are manipulative, dramatic, untrustworthy. Being one of the guys is safer or more powerful. I don't know. In the end, patriarchy fuels competition between men. I mean, between man on man, woman on woman, man and woman. Like it's just because of the way patriarchy is, it's a society where there is always somebody at the top.
Well, and there's always competition versus like cooperation.
I think when women start to recognize this system, we can start to unlearn it and choose solidarity over rivalry. Thanks for listening to me monologue.
I thought it was great. You know, I had nothing to add to it. It's very inspiring.
That's all I really have. That was it. Just talking about internalized misogyny and how that has shown up in sneaky ways for me in religion, rest, and rivalry.
I hope for those of you listening, something was intriguing or sparked a curiosity or you felt affirmed or challenged. Stay educated. Take the pink pill. If you enjoyed this podcast, please give us a follow and maybe a nice review.